in the market for a 7-seat SUV, but don't want to spend more than $60,000 and still want your SUV to be premium. You would think that's an impossibility, but these two SUVs here prove otherwise. We have a standard Hyundai Santa Fe 2.5 turbo front-wheel drive, $53,000 before on-road costs, and we have the entry-level Mazda CX-80, the G40E Pure, $55,200 before on-road costs, and you can have both of these cars for less than $60,000 drive away. So what makes these two SUVs premium? Which one is better at seating 7 people? Which one is more fun to drive? And which one is the one that you should potentially buy? I'm Nathan Ponchard, and this is Chasing Cars.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Why are we comparing the new Santa Fe against a Mazda CX-80? Isn't that a smaller 7-seat SUV? Well, actually, it's not even close. The Santa Fe looks big because it drags everything to the edges. It is a box on wheels purely for packaging, whereas the Mazda is trying to be curvaceous and stylish and more like a car. And so this curvy Mazda here is 160 millimeters longer, its wheelbase is over 300 millimeters longer, and it weighs around 200 kilos more than the Hyundai. So theoretically, this should be the best 7-seater, and this should be smaller and more compact. But the reality is otherwise. Where the Hyundai's perception of expense starts is when you look at the car. It has standard 20-inch wheels on this base Santa Fe for $53,000, whereas this Mazda CX-80 Pure has 18s on this model and on the touring model above that, which is another $7,000 more. And once you approach the Hyundai and do things like this, and notice that it has a standard smart electric tailgate in the base car, you think, wow, for 53 grand it has that? In here, in the petrol version, it has 642 litres in this section, whereas the Mazda only has 566. And it also has electric rear backrest fold. You just hit these two buttons here, and all the seats are flat. The Mazda requires a bit more heavy lifting because it has a manual tailgate. You need to go to the touring above it to have electric, and while it's slightly smaller here, it has the same overall volume as the Santa Fe when all of the seats are lowered, and it does have a 3-prong 220-volt outlet here that the Hyundai does not have. The best example of how ambitious Hyundai has been with this new generation Santa Fe is inside. The previous base model had its own dashboard that was completely decontented and cheap. And compared to this, it looks like it's in a commercial vehicle. In here, we're in the base car, and it is stunning. These two 12.3-inch screens across the dash here are becoming increasingly common, but in the base Santa Fe, here they're curved. We've got wireless smartphone mirroring, wireless phone charging, dual zone climate control, all of these features like this, full stitched leather steering wheel, but it's also stuff like the upholstery with this amazing plaid insert section that just gives it a point of difference. This car is brave, and that is something that really deserves to be rewarded. Everywhere you look, from the stitching across the top of the dash and across the top of the doors here, the slight padding here, this is better than the new generation BMW X3 that costs almost double the money of this Santa Fe. It blows you away. This lovely textured cappuccino color up here, it's gorgeous. And the driver has a 10-way electric seat in a base car. The front passenger doesn't get any height adjustment, but the seat is still really comfortable, and moving the transmission lever over here alleviates all of this space. There is so much room here, all the way under here, all the way down in here, and for a Korean car, you can fit this bottle in the doors, or you can fit it here, and it's not even in your way. Stuff like that makes sense when you carry a lot of people and a lot of stuff. Shifting to the second row in the Santa Fe is not dropping down a class. There is no reduction in quality or in seating comfort here. It is so elevated. I've got such great vision. The seat is brilliant in terms of its under thigh support. The door trims, same as the front, no drop in quality. We've even got stuff like a tray out here that slides out hugely deep. You can fit 3 drinks in each door here. And this seat, even though I've got all of this massive space, is not even all the way back. It goes back to here, which is a tiny bit more, but that is huge. And in the back, even if you're sitting here, you've still got room to sit another pair of adults behind you, although it is better suited for kids. and it has this cool little button release on the bottom that kids can actually reach to get the back seat to slide forward in one beautiful smooth maneuver, and where they sit in there, they're elevated again. So vision in this box on wheels is tremendous. Compared to the broad, expansive Santa Fe, the CX-80 is a lot more intimate. It doesn't feel claustrophobic, it just has everything a bit closer to you, like the A-pillars, the windscreen header, the view over the dashboard. It all seems a lot smaller, even though the Hyundai is a smaller car. There are things in here that are pretty good for a base model. For example, all of the windows are auto one-touch up and down, as they are in the Hyundai. The front passenger has manual height adjustment, which the Hyundai does not have, though we don't have an electric driver's seat here. We also have cloth trim, which I really like, but it's not as cool as the Plaid in the Hyundai. We do have a dial underneath the driver's seat here where you can dial up the under thigh support, which does really compensate for not having electric control, in my opinion. The climate control is dual zone. You do get 8 speakers in the Mazda stereo instead of 6 in the Hyundai, though they both sound relatively similar. They're both pretty good for a base setup, but you have to go all the way to a GT in the CX-80, which is 69 grand to get a 12-speaker Bose premium stereo, whereas in the Hyundai, you just go to the next spec, to the Elite, and you get the same brand and the same number of speakers. It's where you start to look through the details in the CX-80 though, that you notice where Mazda has saved money. Unlike the Hyundai Wii, it's really hard to find where Hyundai's cut costs. And so we might have this sort of soft touch muffin top on top of the dashboard here, but all of this stuff here is rock hard, albeit printed to look like an upholstery or a trim, but it's rock hard. All the tops of the doors are rock hard. The armrests don't have any of the stitching or any of the coverage. All of this and all of this gets covered in upholstery with stitching in every model above the Pure, from the Touring and above. So if you need that stuff and you need wireless charging, because it doesn't have that either, you need to go to the spec above. Whereas the Santa Fe base has all of that already for you. Even sitting in this driver's seat too, the seat is smaller than in the Hyundai. It's nice and huggy and intimate, but it won't suit people who are larger framed. It doesn't feel like a large SUV, and the left part of my shin here is sort of jammed into this hard plastic center bit in here, of which is wide, but doesn't really have anything. It just has the transmission lever, cup holders, but there's not much under here. There's nothing underneath. There's no trays. And while it fits these full-size bottle holders in the doors, this doesn't fit much at all. It does have a 10.25-inch screen, which is kind of okay, but the Hyundai has 12.3, and you need to go 2 specs up in the Mazda to get that, and it's fiddly to use. It's all through this controller here, even though the touchscreen is right there. It blocks you out of that stuff. It is frustratingly fiddly and definitely dated. It does have wireless smartphone mirroring, but that's one area where Mazda is significantly behind its competitors. CX-80's second row is a little bit closer to the Santa Fe in terms of competitiveness. The seat is still really comfortable, a bit more bolstering, holds you in place a bit better, but the cushion is a bit shorter. The middle seat is similarly not so bad to sit in, but there is quite a big transmission tunnel here. We do have temperature control here for the middle row, but the vents are in the center here, not in the B-pillar, and there isn't temperature control or fan speed in the third row. Everything else is fairly similar too. We have proper door grabs here, although again, they're hard plastic like the front. Decontented door trims, just hard plastic. Can fit a full bottle holder in here, and you can slide the seat all the way forward and back, which gives you a lot of space. But the back row, the third row, is nowhere near as good. It's lower, there's no backrest adjustment, the vision isn't as good, and when I'm sitting in there, my leg is just pressed against the air vents, so the air is just, drying my jeans. It doesn't really suit adults on any level, and the kids need to reach all the way up to the top of the backrest to try and get the release for the seat to slide. So it just isn't as well thought out, even though it does give you the same seating options. While the new generation Santa Fe launched in 2024 with a petrol hybrid drivetrain, what we have here is new for 2025, the 2.5 litre turbo petrol 4-cylinder out of the Sonata and into this SUV, 206 kilowatts at 5,800 RPM, 422 Newton meters from 1,750 to 4,000 RPM, and it is tied to an 8-speed wet dual clutch, which was originally developed for Hyundai's N vehicles. So there's quite a lot to like here if you like combustion engines and like a spirited drive and performance. This Santa Fe has plenty of performance. It is much quicker than the petrol hybrid. The 0 to 100 claim for the Santa Fe is around 8 seconds, and that's reasonably quick for what we're in here. The V6 Santa Fe of the past did somewhere in the mid to high 7s, and I imagine you could pretty much easily beat that 8-second mark, certainly in the all-wheel drive, because this Santa Fe has a ton of punch. This front-wheel drive version does struggle a little bit for traction on wet days like today, but if you live somewhere where it almost never rains, like in parts of WA or in South Australia, then you don't really need to buy the all-wheel drive, because it's not really an off-roader, it's about traction. That said, the all-wheel drive is a better driver's car and does put more of its performance to the ground. So if you like fanging your 7-seat family SUV, perhaps a turbo petrol all-wheel drive is in line for you. As for the rest of the driving experience, you would never know that this base Santa Fe is on 20-inch wheels. 255/45 R20 tyres. This base Santa Fe is anything but base. It has a ton of grip, and yet it isn't actually noisy. These tyres are fairly quiet. It rides pretty well. You would never know this is a vehicle on 20-inch wheels. It actually is quite supple and quite absorbent. It completely fits the brief of what you want a 7-seat family SUV to be. And yet so does the feeling from behind the wheel. Sitting here, looking at this amazing view, beautiful seat, great quality, just this waftiness about it. I think that's it. It's the waft of the new Santa Fe, the way that it just imperviously just plows over pavement, just taking everything in its stride effortlessly and quietly. And that says expense, and yet this car is not expensive, not for what you get. It is mind-blowing value for money. And so when you start to have all of that sort of put in your head, you think, how can I do better than this Santa Fe? I feel sorry for the CX-80 in a little way, because this is really as good as you're going to get. So anything less than this, which is brilliant, is just not the benchmark in 2025. If you have to pick on the Santa Fe in a few areas, I would say you're better off to go to the Elite for the dual wireless phone charging and its 12-speaker stereo. I'd want the better stereo, just simple as that. But I love the plaid cloth, so I'd be torn between the two of them. The lane keep assist and that is a little bit eager at times, but you can drive the Santa Fe even around Sydney, narrow lanes, hilly roads, and leave the lane assist on all the time, and it really isn't too annoying, which is surprising given the amount of cars we've driven lately that have been almost borderline undrivable with that on. The driver distraction monitoring is annoying, but you just program it all into the star, one button there, one switch away on the screen, and it all goes away. That is actually really the only area to pick on in the Santa Fe. It is also thirsty in the Mazda, but really not by much. Its combined fuel consumption claim is 9.3 litres per 100 Ks, drinking 91 octane regular unleaded, and we've averaged 9.1 in this vehicle. The Mazda's is 8.4 and we averaged 8.9. So it's all much of a muchness. I think when you're on a trip, the Santa Fe is really economical, and its 8-speed dual clutch transmission is excellent. But when you are using all of its performance, that's when it starts to show that this engine can be a little bit thirsty if you ask for everything that it has to give. The thing about the Santa Fe though, is that it democratizes the whole entire nameplate. You're no longer buying a base model that looks and feels like a base model, and almost encouraging you to spend more money to buy the top spec car. Even though the calligraphy with matte paint and the 6-seat setup with an olive green interior is so rock star, I love it so much that you can understand why people might want to spend $70-something thousand on that thing. But here we are in a mid-50s $1,000 car that doesn't need any options, that still blows you away with all the features that it has, how well it drives, how comfortable it is to be in, and how much of an X factor it has. This is the best car that Hyundai has ever made. In isolation, this CX-80 Pure on 18-inch wheels for $55,200 before on-road costs is a really good thing. It is clearly better than the CX-60 it is so closely based on, this being essentially a CX-60L, because it has 250mm more wheelbase and 250mm more length. So all it has is longer rear doors and a longer middle to fill out the back of it. And I suppose you see that in the way that it looks, because it just doesn't have that visual cohesion that the Hyundai has. It is not a particularly pretty car, although the CX-8 that it replaced wasn't pretty either, and people bought that. So clearly not everybody minds. They like Mazda 7-seaters. And as they go, this is the best so far. It is way, way cheaper than a CX-90, but I still don't think that it has the suaveness that the outgoing CX-9 still had right at the end of its life. I love the fact that Mazda has made an effort to introduce longitudinal inline 6-cylinder engines as a point of difference, as a point of premiumness. And so the premium aspect of this CX-60 is very much in its engineering rather than some of the interior bits and pieces that we've already been through and that sort of stuff. It doesn't have the surprise and delight that the Hyundai has. But I don't think that it has the ultimate driving performance of it either. It does have straight line performance because the engine is really strong. 209 kilowatts at 5,000 to 6,000 RPM from its 3.3 litre turbo petrol 6-cylinder, 450 Newton meters from 2,000 to 3,500 RPM. So those numbers are strong. And while it has way less power than the CX-90, the same engine in that car producing 254 kilowatts, in here it's really strong. Like that's naturally the way that it throws me back. It has, I suppose, a little bit of a gnarliness about the way that it revs out. It's a little bit grainy, a little bit coarse, but it is definitely strong, although it isn't something that you want to constantly rev out all the time because it's perhaps not as sporty as I was expecting it to sound, but you will never be in any doubt that your CX-80 doesn't have performance. But the rest of it is just all not quite completely tied together. It has a similarly large turning circle to the Hyundai. It's sort of 11.6 meters, but we have 3.2 turns lock to lock in this. And you find sometimes that the steering weighting is too heavy at parking speeds and you're giving it a lot of lock, sort of making you work for it more than people are used to in large SUVs these days. And while you're out on the road driving one up and having a bit of a go in the CX-80 Pure, it actually is quite a fun driver's car. It's really on it with its steering. It really points its nose into corners. It handles really well and all that stuff. It ultimately does fall down a little bit in its ride. It is way, way better than the CX-60 that it is essentially a development of, because that was just terrible. Whereas this is only terrible sometimes. If you're going over really big dips in the road, there is a lot of vertical movement in this car. It really lifts up and bangs down almost onto its sponge stops. And when I say bangs, it's not loud, but it's just a lot of movement. And the Hyundai doesn't really have that. It's a lot more serene. And while the Hyundai isn't quite as on it as a driver's car in terms of its precision, the Mazda doesn't tile the rest of the other stuff together. It's not comfortable enough. It is not effortless enough, and the engine even isn't quite as quiet as I think it probably could be. Even the safety assist systems, of which there is an absolute ton, and that's admirable, but the things like, I can see here, emergency lane keeping, road keep assist, blind spot assist, head-on collision assist, lane keep assist, you'll be driving along and it'll be beeping and sort of trying to nudge the wheel off over here. If you haven't indicated early enough before you change lanes, it will fight against you sometimes. Also, the brakes are a little bit wooden. They don't feel great. They don't have the cushy, smooth progression that the Hyundais have. And so a lot of these aspects really don't entirely imply that the development of this car is as cohesive. And there's one more thing. This is the update of this drivetrain and this setup that was introduced with the CX-60 and CX-90, and yet here we are with Mazda's own 8-speed automatic that is still a lot better than before, but it's still not smooth. It'll still thump and shunt, especially when it's warm, and it just doesn't perform like you would expect of a modern 8-speed automatic in 2025. Automatics have been around for 85 years, and we're still doing this. Whereas the Hyundai's dual clutch is mostly impeccable. The best way to get to the essence of these affordable premium SUVs is to look for where they've tried to save money. In the Santa Fe base, it's almost impossible to find somewhere where they've cut corners and cut cost. Everywhere you look, it's more than you're expecting. But with the CX-80 Pure, it might be robustly built, it might have nice seats, all that sort of stuff, but you can really evidently see where cost has been cut out of it. And if you spend $7 or $8 grand more on the Touring, all of that stuff is covered over in material, certainly in the interior, but the exterior still looks the same. This car is almost dated in looks and it's brand new compared to the Santa Fe, which might be polarizing, but this foxy boxy is good SUV here is so far beyond expectation in what it does that it is absolutely astounding value at $53,000 before on-road costs, 58 drive away, or 61 if you get the all-wheel drive, which is probably the spec I would get. So, who would know that this Hyundai here is a Genesis level of quality and premiumness in an every person's car? That is all anyone could ever want out of a large family SUV. And the CX-80, it's a nice car, but it's not finished. It's still a little bit unrefined, and it's just not premium enough, even though it's meant to be premium. Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with Mazda's push for these straight six premium engineered SUVs that may not be quite as plush on the inside? Do you love the Santa Fe, the way it's so boxy, the way it stands out on the road, or hate it? Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about chasing cars. If you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video and hit the notification bell. And thank you for watching.